If you ever had a binge eating episode and then you felt like shit, no worries, welcome to the club. Now, today we will talk about binge eating in order to see if it's a problem of discipline or if there are more mechanisms involved, and let's see how to deal with that in a better way. So, first of all, the binge eating is not a matter of discipline. Why is not a matter of discipline? Because it's more a matter of pain looking for an exit door. It's not that we lack discipline, it's that food is the perfect exit door. The pain looking for an exit door will find the food that is like an hug, but with some calories included. So this is the point. So it's a matter of emptiness. It's a matter of emotions that we feel and we try to compensate in some ways. The problem is that the food will make us feel ashamed. So it will lead to more pain that will look for another exit door and will come back in the food. So this is a loop that we're keeping and repeating every time. This is the thing. And you know that the shame is one of the ways that you can use in order to break this mechanism. Why? Don't focus on the shame. Like, I used to have so much shame for my binge eating disorders that at some point I realized that I need to take it like a fun topic, like I want to make it fun. In fact, in these days, what I did is like 2 days ago, I had a binge eating episode and I wanted to talk about it because I used to not talk about binge eating episodes because I was ashamed, but I actually found out that the best way to go towards a binge eating episode is to avoid it. If you instead talk about this and you have fun about this, you're actually removing the shame and stopping the loop. This is the point, but let's go further and deep dive in it. So let's understand all the mechanisms involved in the binge eating. Let's divide them in mind, emotions, and body. Why? First of all, mind. The real responsible of that. So first of all, talking about the mind, perfectionism. Because let's say everything starts wanted to be perfect in everything, but at some point for the stress or for whatsoever, let's say I'm in a gym and the first thing that led me to binge eating disorders was trying to be perfect in my weight loss journey. And that's why I'm talking about this, because so many people start to go in the gym as a form of compensation quite often, but they want to do everything perfect, like everything needs to be perfect. And when you do something wrong, there is nothing wrong, little spoiler. When you do something wrong, you basically are interrupting your streak of perfectionism because you weren't perfect anymore, and what you did is like feeling like failure. And what's the best way to compensate the failure? Going deeper. You know, those times where you're not perfect, so you think like all or nothing mindset, literally. You failed, so we failed already. Let's go all in the failure. So you give up and you go towards the binge eating. But it's not just that, it's because after failing, we feel literally ashamed. Because we were trying to do some stuff, let's say in the gym, in our weight loss, and we failed in that one. So we feel shameful about this. And these feelings make us feeling even worse because we feel like literally like we failed in everything. We feel less than others, like the gym and the social media especially nowadays look like that everyone is perfect. accept us, and we feel even more ashamed when we try to imitate them, to emulate them, and then we fail, and we feel much more of a failure, more ashamed, and then we try to compensate. That's why the mind mechanisms are so important to understand in this mechanism. And not only that, because the shame is not because we failed, but even because we then eat a binge eating episode, because we failed, we went toward the shame, and shame will lead to another binge eating episode that will start a new loop. And we will feel ashamed even because we had this binge eating episode. Actually, let's do like this. And we try to hide ourselves. We try to literally avoid to talk about binge eating, that we started to eat so much, non-stop, etc. Or we try to avoid this topic at all. We kind of try to deny that this ever happened. But the problem is that more we deny that, more we obsess with that. You know, like the pink elephant story. Like when you tell to someone, don't think about the pink elephant, the only thing that that guy will do is thinking about the pink elephant. So more we try to avoid to talk about binge eating, more we obsess with this, especially with the food, especially because in the gym, obsession. Especially because in the gym, what happens is that we try to avoid food, because this happens quite often in the weight loss journeys, and we try to be perfect, but we fail, we feel shameful, we repeat the binge eating episode, but we try to avoid this, feeling more ashamed, etc., to the point that we just think about food. And more we think about food, guess what? More we try to be perfect. So it's an endless loop that we started. That's why it's so important to go towards our emotions, because everything starts from here. Okay, what does it mean this? It means that basically the binge eating is a form of copy mechanism. So basically we feel bad for something, and our mind, feeling bad for something, try to compensate in order to suppress literally that feeling. But more we try to avoid the feeling, more we increase the loop. This is the point, because we just started a new copy mechanism. So we started a new habit in a certain way. So we try to be perfect. We fail because there is no perfection in this world. So we feel more ashamed, and this will lead to binge eating, and this will lead to more obsession. So it's a copy mechanism that we just started. And all of that because we're trying to suppress some emotions, like the fear of failure in this case, and we try to anesthetize our feeling of a failure or our anxiety, even with the stress. I will talk about this later on. I will explain you why. Because there are different mechanisms that are involved in this one, like stress or other stuff, but quite often is because we feel not enough. We feel like a failure, we feel empty, because in this world there is so much competition with other people that we feel like never enough, especially with social media that normally started in order to get people closer, to feel better. Actually the intention was noble? Actually the intention was good, but the point is that it started just an endless competition with others. And of course, social media, everyone is perfect, and we feel that everyone is perfect except us. And what happens that we feel not enough, and we try to compensate being perfect, and we start increasing this and that. And the only thing that we can do at the end is anesthetize our negative emotions with the food, because everything starts with the emotion. That's why it's so important to understand our emotions. And I will close this video talking about that, because it's so important for me. So first of all, I want to say that of course I'm not a psychotherapist, and I don't want to substitute any psychotherapist in this. It's just because quite often we feel so ashamed of this stuff that we avoid to talk with people, and even cause of shameful emotions, like we feel like ashamed of binge eating, but even talking about the therapist. I don't know in UK or USA or Australia or any other English country, but anyway, I don't know the other countries, but for example in Italy there is a very strong shameful reaction when you talk about mental health. Like mental health is a form of shame nowadays, and especially in the past. Now is a bit better, but the thing is that when we feel like not enough or feeling bad emotionally, we feel like ashamed, that we tend to avoid this stuff. And even going to the therapist means quite often feeling or thinking that someone is not good mentally, that is associated with, I don't know, being crazy or this kind of stuff. But mental health is so important nowadays, guys, and I don't want that no one feels in this way. So I will be the first one to tell you that if you feel uncomfortable or you think that you can have some kind of binge eating disorder, talk to a psychotherapist. Guys, it will change your life for the better. So it's not a shame, no worries. You don't know how many jar of Nutella I ended, or peanut butter, amazing. Or pizzas or whatsoever, guys, it's not a shame. Just being conscious, being mindful of our mechanism, and talk with someone that is expert and that can help you. And whenever you feel ashamed, well, with this video, I'm trying to make you understand that there is no shame. This is the purpose of this video, to understand that there is no shame in those things. It is actually very normal. And you know, probably I understood this stuff when I started studying history, when people were going towards alcohol and drugs, you know, like the Roman Empire after a big win, they were enjoying with some beers and social events, this kind of stuff. But then some people get addicted, of course, and someone had kind of problem with this kind of stuff. So I understand that there are some loops that we just need to comprehend and switch. That's it. So guys, there is no shame. This is the most important part. And trust me, there are more people affected by this stuff than you could never expect. I'm the first one, so guys, yeah. And even though, by the way, I have a therapist for over 2.5 years probably, I rarely talk about this because I'm not ashamed anymore. So when I started with my therapist, this wasn't the goal. So I contacted the therapist because I wanted to feel better for my mental health. So we talked a couple of times about this, but she noticed that I wasn't worried at all about this mechanism. It was more about understanding my emotions, because this is the key to overcome everything, because we just try to anesthetize our emotions. When we instead go deeper in our emotion, that is very painful, guys, well, at that point we don't need to hide them in food. This is the point. So that's why it's so important to understand that it's a matter of emotions. So point number 3. All of that in order to say that when we feel bad, when we feel not enough, when we feel ashamed of this stuff, we tend to isolate more and more. And isolation doesn't mean that you need to go alone somewhere. Even not talking about this stuff is a form of isolation, because everyone looks perfect except for us. So what we do, we don't talk about this stuff, and we make it worse in a certain way. So guys, don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed. This is not something to be ashamed. Nothing is worth it to be ashamed of. We just need to understand our behaviors and try to improve it. That's it. But yeah, let's go further. Let's talk about the body, because the body, even if in my opinion plays a smaller role, it still plays a role. And this one is done by hormones, first of all. Hormones, especially dopamine and serotonin. Why? Because those hormones are very important in our feedback loops. So for example, the dopamine, that quite often is referred like the pleasure molecule, the pleasure hormones is not this, is the drive hormone. So dopamine drives our behaviors. This is the point. So this is just a drive to our behaviors. Why? Because when we do something and we see a reward, this will drive, is a form of pleasure, the reward of course, and this will drive to repeat this mechanism. This is the point. So the dopamine can be confused with the pleasure molecule, but no, it's the drive, it's the molecule that will guide us to repeat this behavior. It's the serotonin that is much more related to the pleasure, because you know food is a form of pleasure and was always like this, and this is correct. So food is nutrition for our body, yes, but is it even a form of pleasure, and is even a form of pleasure for the social events that bring with us. You know, I'm Italian and we love to eat food and enjoy good company and this kind of stuff. And this doesn't mean that we cannot use the food in this way. We just need to understand how to balance this in order to have like a good way to use this like a form of pleasure. Because if the pleasure leads to negative loops, well, this is not a good use. But we can do a lot in order to use the food as a pleasure and in order to improve our body. So nutrition and a balanced form of pleasure. This is the point. So those two hormones are key hormones that will direct ourselves and our behaviors towards towards the food. Because basically when we try to avoid some emotions, so we feel bad first of all, and we try to avoid emotions in order to anesthetize from that pain, and this will lead to a dopamine release, because we feel bad, like we feel this bad, so we feel low in this case. We take some food, so we feel much better, and feeling much better basically will feel like a form of pleasure and rewards. But the point is that after a binge eating episode we will feel worse, and this may lead to another binge eating episode that for a short amount of time will make us feeling better, but less better than before, but actually much worse. So when we understand the loops, this will change everything, because it's a form of loop. So emotions, negative emotion, we feel down and we are here, we feel down. So we go towards the food because it's a form of pleasure, and plus you anesthetize your pain and you feel better for that moment, like for those 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatsoever. But then you feel worse because you feel ashamed, for example, because you ruined your progression. And then you go towards another binge eating episode or other form of compensation, but this will make us feeling worse. So the point is, in order to avoid that emotion, we compensate with food or other stuff, make us feeling better for a short amount of time, because we avoided a mild pain. If we instead go towards a bigger pain, so let's say this is our bigger pain, actually let's do in here. So let's say that from this pain we go towards a bigger pain that is facing the real reason of that pain. We will feel much worse on the short term, but then we will feel much better, and we will be able to compensate everything with mindfulness. I know mindfulness can be referred to everything, but the point is that instead of avoiding the pain, trying to compensate, we should face the pain that will lead us to a much more intense pain in the short term, but a much better outcome on the long term. So remember, this is a matter of facing the pain. But except for the hormones, there are other factors involved. You know, there is a lots of marketing on this stuff, like on everything actually, but let's talk about the hunger. So quite often we talk about junk food like the worst thing in the world, etc., or the sugars. So for example, the sugar or the junk food, and marketing is very aggressive on that. I understand people that use this for marketing because there is always a little bit of truth behind, because yeah, those sugar, junk food and this kind of stuff will make us feeling better, so it's literally the start of a new loop. But the point is that it's not that bad if you just use like the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, for example. You can still enjoy a 20% of junk food or sugar, because even sugar is like so wide like a word, because you know even fruit is sugar and it's not bad. Guys, whatever we use, our body will transform it in sugar in a certain way, so don't worry about the sugar. And even the junk food, guys, food is a form of pleasure, but more we avoid the junk food and the sugar whatsoever, more we're going towards another extreme, that is then another form of perfectionism. To be balanced, you can eat whatever you want, enjoying the life and achieving your goals. Just be mindful of the 80-20% rule. So you can eat whatever you want. You can eat all the sugar that you want. I mean, not all the sugar, but you got it. You can understand that there is no such a bad thing. Junk food is just another form of extremism. You can enjoy your burger weekly or even daily. You can do that. I mean, maybe it's too much, yeah. But the point is, we start to demonize some stuff because of marketing or other reasons. But the point is that the key of everything is balance. Yes, those ones will start a loop, will make you feel weaker and desire more food. Yes, but the key is balance. Then you can enjoy your cheesecake, your burgers, your pizza, whatsoever. Guys, you live once, live good. And point number 3, the main reason why I had that binge eating episode was this tiredness, because basically I was working a lot, like 12-14 hours in the gym, and I was doing lots of steps. Like if you saw my videos, I'm documenting everything. I was doing 30-35,000 steps for 4 or 5 days in a row, no stop. Plus I'm in a caloric deficit, plus I wasn't sleeping enough, and I felt very tired. And when you're tired, your body in a certain way at least mine, think that you need food. That's why it can lead to binge eating disorders. Even because when you feel tired, you want some form of pleasure. You know, for example, not talking about food, let's talk about social media. What happens when you're tired? You don't want to do difficult stuff. You want just to chill down. And that's why we start to scroll. And this is the same with any form of addiction, because let's say even the drugs, even the alcohol, this is just a form of compensation for something that is painful to us. So we feel like in a negative way, so we feel a negative emotion whatsoever. We feel a negative emotion, we want to avoid it. We can avoid with alcohol, drugs, food, social media. What's the difference? That alcohol and drugs, first of all, are more addictive, yes, but they are especially more expensive. Food instead is much cheaper, and that's why it's becoming much more frequent to use it as a form of compensation. That's why the obesity is rising a lot. I mean, obesity is a multifactorial problematic, but the point is that the food is a cheap form of compensation. Social media, even worse, they are so addictive because there are so many mechanisms involved, like gambling, let's say, and they are free. But the point is that they are not free. You pay with your attention and your mental health, because you feel like always worse, a form of comparison, the other are better, and so on. And then you start other negative mechanisms. So guys, what I want to share with this video is that the binge eating is not a lack of discipline, it's not a lack of willpower, it's not a form of negative, like it's not anything negative. It's just a loop that starts because we don't want to face some emotions. So that's why we need to start, for example, a psychotherapy journey with some experts. And then when you understand, just understand your coping mechanism and try to change it for the better, like improving slightly. But remember, no perfectionism, no extreme just go for the 80%. You can do whatever you want in life. Even social media, they start with good intent, like to connect people. The point is that instead of using the 20%, we're using 99%, for example. Even, I don't know, other stuff. What we need to do is just facing the bad emotion that all of us feels, because all of us feel like not enough. All of us feels like struggling in this world. All of us are stressed. This is the point. We need to face this emotion and embrace it, because when you embrace it, you feel a bigger pain at the beginning, but then you will feel much better. And that's why the psychotherapy journey will help you to understand this stuff, face it, and then release it in a better way. Because otherwise, you will try always to avoid emotion with anesthesia mechanisms that are food or whatsoever. You avoid this emotion and you go worse, 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 as I show in this beautiful graph. But yeah, there is no shame on that, guys. Don't feel ashamed. Actually, laugh on this, because this was the secret that led me to overcome it. Laughing about my binge eating episode, because quite often we feel like we don't deserve to be in this world. We feel, I don't know why we feel like this way, like this world doesn't need us, this kind of stuff. Guys, we have one life, and I want that in this life you will enjoy as much as possible. I know it's difficult sometimes, it's difficult even for me, like in this period, but the thing is that we will always have periods of good and bad moments. The point is always up and down. So even if you feel like in a bad moment, no worries, because after a night there is always the sun. Don't forget that. And well, keep on going, don't give up, and just look the positive, just laugh on your problem, on the negative things, because we have one life and we can enjoy with these small bullshits, because we can make fun of it. Well, I think the best way to face the life is laughing at it.